This was the question we did yesterday, last time. We defined irreducible elements, we defined a prime element, and then we saw that every prime is irreducible in an integral domain, but the converse is not true. That means there are irreducible elements which are not prime in integral domains. So for that, I gave you this example of the ring z square root, just a minute, it's z square root minus 3, and in this we found that the element 1 plus square root of minus 3 is irreducible. We proved it by the definition of irreducible, and then we show that this is not prime, and that also we showed by the definition of prime element, right? So anybody has any doubt in this particular example? Right. So the next example we did was in the ring of Gaussian integers z iota, the element 1 minus iota is irreducible. So how did I prove this is irreducible? So there are two ways. You can prove by definition as well, that you can try rationalizing this, sorry, factorizing this a plus iota b into c plus iota d, where a, B, C, D belongs to integers, and then you can take norm on both the sides. So taking norm on both the sides, you will be getting a square plus b square into c square plus d square is equal to 2, and from there you will be getting the contradiction. Otherwise, directly we used this result which I told you, that what you can do, you just take norm of that element. So if you take norm of that element, so if an element is defined like this, so this is a general kind of element structure looks like, where whatever be the value of d, for example, in n of 1 minus iota, this I showed you yesterday, your a is 1, b is minus 1, and d is also minus 1, because that's why iota is coming. So if you find the norm of this, just turns out to be 2. So the result says if norm of x turns out to be prime, then the element is irreducible. So that is a very helpful result which we can employ, but its converse is not true. That means suppose nx turns out to be prime, but sorry, not prime, that is composite, even then the number can be irreducible. So use it carefully, it's just one-sided result. Similarly, we can have plenty of more examples given any random ring and any random element. So you are supposed to know its irreducibility. So you know the definition and you can try finding it. Okay, so now let me go ahead towards the next result which we are going to do today. So this is basically a theorem which says that in a principal ideal domain, an element is prime if and only if it is irreducible. So let's first understand the statement. Okay, let's first understand the statement of the question. So the theorem is telling you that in a principal ideal domain, an element is prime if and only if it is irreducible. So in general, we know this, the result which we saw yesterday and proved it, that in an integral domain, prime implies irreducible, but through examples we saw irreducible does not imply prime. But now this new result is telling you that if your integral domain is a particular type, what particular type? If it is a principal ideal domain, then irreducible is same as prime. Same as means an element is going to be irreducible if and only if prime. That means the element which is prime is irreducible, the element which is irreducible, it is a prime. So prime implies irreducible was already there. So now irreducible is also implying prime in a principal ideal domain. This is what we want to prove. So since PID is an ID, the principal ideal domain is an integral domain first, it implies every prime is irreducible. So that means we just need to prove the other part. We need to only show that every irreducible is prime. So let A belongs to D, where D is the principal ideal domain and A is the irreducible element. Okay, so what do you want to show? A is prime. What is the definition of prime element? That if A divides BC, so we know that definition of prime element is that if A divides BC, it should imply A divides B or A divides C. So if you are able to prove that, so we will prove that number is prime. So to show A is prime, so we suppose A is dividing B into C, where B and C are also some elements of the integral domain of the principal ideal domain D. Right, so now I'm going to construct a set. Construct a set I AX plus BY XY belongs to D. So basically what I have done is I have taken this set, the elements A and B particularly, and taken their linear combinations. So this set which I have constructed is going to be I. So it is very easy to prove that this set is going to be ideal. It is very easy to prove, right? I is ideal. So this part you can show yourself. How it is easy to show? I'll tell you that you remember principal ideal. Principal ideals were those ideals which are generated by single element. But if you want to find elements generated by more than one element, then it looks like this. The linear combinations AX plus BY. So this is the ideal actually generated by A and B, right? So this is show that this is ideal. Now, further, since I is an ideal of D, and what is D? D is a principal ideal domain. It implies there exists D belongs to D such that I is generated by D. We constructed an ideal, and now we are saying since the ring is a principal ideal domain, so there should be a single generator of that ideal. So there will exist some D element belonging to D such that it is going to generate the whole ideal I, right? So I is going to be generated by this element D. Now A. A belongs to I, clearly. No doubt in that A belongs to I, because in I what kind of elements are there? AX plus BY, where XY belongs to D. So if I take X is 1 and if I take Y is 0, so putting X equals to 1, Y is equal to 0, I will get A into 1 plus B into 0 is A. So for all choices of X and Y, all these elements are in my ideal, right? So that means A belongs to ideal. Now A belongs to ideal and I is further generated by the element D, it implies A is R into D. It should be some multiple of D, because that's how the elements of generator principal ideal looks like. It is going to be a multiple of D. So A is R into D. Now we'll use the property that A is irreducible. Yes. Who is going to tell me the next step? Since A is irreducible, so what should I write next?
या तो R यूनिट होगा या D यूनिट है.
Yes, so that's the definition of irreducibility. Since A is irreducible, uh, it implies either R is unit or D is unit, right? So let's take up these two cases one by one. So if D is unit, then what will happen? The I will be equal to the whole domain. The ideal will generate the whole domain, because this, remember, you remember this result, that if an ideal contains unit element, then the ideal is equal to the whole ring. There were two results actually. One of these we did, in which I was asked, I was asking you to prove, or we, I think, did the proof in class only, that in, if ideal contains unity multiplicative identity element, then the ideal becomes a whole ring. So same is here, if the ideal contains unit element, then also the ideal becomes a whole ring. So this is means this can be also very easily proven, because if unit element is there, so that means uh, what will happen, it's inverse, that element is unit, so you can create identity there. Like, so let me take you an example. If U belongs to an ideal, say where U is unit, then because U is unit element of ring, so U inverse also belongs to ring. It implies U into U inverse should belongs to I, because that is a definition of ideal, that any ring element you multiply with the element of ideal, you get a element of ideal. So U into U inverse means the multiplicative identity belongs to I. It implies I is equal to the ring itself. So this is the result which we are going to use here, that if the unit element belongs to, if D is unit, so if the ideal is generated by the unit, then that ideal is nothing but the complete ring itself. So if the ideal becomes a complete ring itself, and the complete ring is an integral domain, that means, now how do the elements of I looks like? Ax plus by. Now since 1 belongs to D, so 1 can also be written like Ax plus By, because unity element can also be written like Ax plus By. So somehow I want to introduce C, because you remember B was a special element where A was dividing BC. So now let me multiply with C on both sides. So C is Cax plus Cby. Now, you recall where we started from. We started from this. Suppose A divides BC. So if A divides BC, so clearly A divides this element BC into Y, because if A divides BC, A divides BC into Y. A also divides AC into X, because A is explicitly coming there, right? So it implies A divides C, because A is dividing the right hand side, so A is dividing the left hand side also. So hence proved in this particular case. That is what we wanted to prove, that if A divides BC, it should divide either B or C. So we proved A divides C, right? Now, what was the other case we were left with? So this was the one case if D is unit. We were here, either R is unit or D is unit. So if D is unit, our result is proved. So let's see what happens if R is unit. So if R is unit, in that case, what is going to happen? Yes, A is D into R basically. this is how the product looks like. The definition, the connection of A and R looks like. So if R is unit, then the ideal generated by A will be same as ideal generated by D, because multiplication with a unit element does not, make any difference, because that's how the ideals look like. If an element multiples, all multiples are there, so if it is containing a multiple of unit element also, so it contains all multiples. The same reason, which the same kind of explanation which I gave you above. So then the ideal generated by A is going to be same as the ideal generated by D. Now B also belongs to I. Where is I? I was AX plus BY, where this X and Y belongs to D. Again, how B belongs to I? If you take X is 0, Y is 1, so that will give you B from here. So B belongs to I. So B belongs to I implies B can be written as, so B belongs to I means B is a multiple of D, say D times S. It implies B is D times S. Now what is D? From here I can say A R inverse is equal to D. Now why I'm able to write that? Because R is a unit. So B is DS means B is D A R inverse. It implies A divides B. A is coming in the factorization of B, so A divides B, hence proved. So even if you want to skip this, so that is also fine. Directly you can use this step to establish the result, that A is coming out to be dr, where R is unit, so it implies R inverse exists, so D can be written like AR inverse. So I have just used that value here. So in both the cases, we are done with the proof. So what we have proved, that in a PID, in a principal ideal domain, it is equivalent. The prime element is going to be same as the irreducible element. Yes. So can you give me an example of a principal ideal domain? Yes. Any example of a principal ideal domain? Any ring which is a PID? Yes. Anybody knows the answer? We have discussed this. Yes. Any ring which is PID? Z, the ring of integers. This is a principal ideal domain. Every ideal in Z is of this form, generated by some n. So every ideal is a principal ideal and it is an integral domain. So it's a PID. So Z is a PID. This is one example of PID. What are other examples of PID? Every field is a principal ideal domain. Fx, we had this Fx is a PID. The polynomial ring generated from the fields is a PID, where F is a field. So that is also a PID. Every field itself is a principal ideal domain. So there are many examples of a PID. So in those you can apply this result to find out the elements which are prime. So the same elements will be irreducible. Right? So that proves this result. And now let me go ahead with the next definition. So the next definition which we are going to introduce in this chapter is unique factorization domain. I will put more examples in the assignment for you to practice regarding the kind of questions we did in the previous lecture, that given an element, how to know it is irreducible or something like that, using all these results. So more examples will be there in the assignment. You can practice from there. So let me go ahead with the definition of UFD. So this is unique factorization domain. Just like PID is a, you can say, abbreviation or short form of saying principal ideal domain. So for unique factorization domain, we call it UFD. So the definition says this is an integral domain is said to be a unique factorization domain UFD if first condition is every non-zero element of D that is not a unit can be written as product of irreducibles of D. This is one thing. The second part says the factorization into irreducible is unique up to associates and the order in which the factors appear. So let me explain the definition first with the help of an example, then you will be able to understand it better. So this is saying that when do we say integral domain is a unique factorization domain? So it's clear from the name only, it's unique factorization. So that means you're going to factorize in the domain, and that factorization is going to be a unique way of factorization. So if that property is satisfied, then we say it unique factorization domain. So the first part says that you are able to factorize every non-zero non-unit element. It's written that is not a unit, so you can add here only every non-zero non-unit element can be written as product of irreducibles, and the second part tells you that this factorization is unique up to associates and the order in which factors appear. So I will explain you the meaning of this, that what do you mean by uniqueness up to associates, right? So let me take the examples of this first. So in example, I'm starting with the simplest possible example, the ring of integers Z. So Z is a unique factorization domain. So this is something we already know by the fundamental theorem of arithmetic. Yes, anybody knows the statement of this theorem? Fundamental theorem of arithmetic? Have you read this so far in any of your courses? Okay, so the fundamental theorem of arithmetic tells you that every integer can be written as the product of primes, right? So in ring of integers we have primes. So give me any integer, say I want to have the integer 28, right? So 28 can be written like, say firstly I'll be writing it in as whatever comes to my mind, 4 into 7, and then 4 further can be written like 2 into 2 into 7. So this factorization which I have written here, this is the factorization, means this is as a product of primes. So my unique factorization domain demands it to be as a product of irreducible, but we know that in the ring of integers every prime is same as the irreducible. So all prime numbers actually are the irreducible elements. You cannot further break down the prime numbers, right? 7 cannot be written like something into another number, 2 cannot be factorized further. So these prime numbers are our irreducible element. So this is your point number 1, that any non-zero non-unit element we can write it as a product of irreducibles. So you are able to factorize as product of irreducibles, right? So now what do you mean by this factorization is unique? This factorization is unique means I can also write it like minus 2 2 into minus 7. It will still make 28, right? If I factorize it like this, minus 2 into say minus 7, still makes 28, right? So the factorization, you can say this is a different factorization, this is a different factorization. That is true, they both are different factorizations, but if you just consider the way you have factorized, the new factorization does not involve new primes. The new factorization does not involve new irreducible elements. These are just the associates of the previous ones. This minus 2 is the associate of 2. 2 is the associate of 2. Minus 7 is the associate of 7. Remember what is the relationship between them? So the relationship between them is they are associates of each other. So that is what we mean that this factorization is unique up to associates. That if somebody is giving you a different factorization, then the newer factors are not going to be any new elements. They are not going to be different. They are just going to be associates of the previous one. What were associates, if I recall you? Associate was that if an element can be obtained from other by just multiplication with unit element, then we say it associate. So in ring of integers, the plus minus n are associates of each other because 2 can be obtained from minus 2 by multiplying with minus 1 and so on. So that is what the meaning of this line is. The factorization is unique up to associates. And what else they are saying? And the order in which factor appears. Order, that means order does not matter. Means I can write 28 as 2 into 7 into 2, 7 into 2 into 2. So this all will be considered one, the same factorization. You cannot say 28 is having 3 factorizations, right? So this is not true. It's going to have exactly uniquely one factorization. So the order does not matter. In whichever order you write the factors, the product still turns out to be the same number. So is this clear to everybody? What is the meaning of this uniqueness up to associates and the order?
Yes, ma'am.
Right? So this I explained you with the example of integers. So we have the example of UFD. The ring of integers is a unique factorization domain. And if I want to more explain more the point number 2, this can be written like, in other words, is if say some element A is there, p1 raised to power m1, p2 raised to power m2, pk raised to power mk, say this is one of the factorization of that element into irreducible. Just like this was 2 into 2 into 7. So 2 into 2 into 7 is basically 2 square into 7, right? So we just take the same primes and then raise to the power. So if some other factorization is there, Q1 N1, Q2 N2, say Qj Nj. So what do you mean by property number 2? That these Pi's and Qj's are associates of each other, right? And Ni is same as Mj. So, or let me write Nj is same as Mi. So these are going to be same, right? P1, P2, Pk, Q1, Q2, Qj, the irreducible elements, they are going to be associates of each other and their powers are going to be same. So 28 cannot have a factorization 2 square into 7. It cannot have other factorization where 2 raised to power cube is there, right? So that is really not possible. So the powers also essentially turns out to be same. So that is what the meaning of this UFD is. So to give you another example of UFD, so example number 2 of a unique factorization domain is ZX. ZX, the ring of polynomials over integers. This is a unique factorization domain. So you can understand this with the help of any particular example. So let me take any example, say, um, factorization is possible. X raised to power 4 plus 2x square plus 1. So we know that it has the factorization x square plus 1 into x square plus 1, because this is x square plus 1 whole square. So now x square plus 1, we know x square plus 1 is irreducible over z. Everybody knows that we have done this irreducibility over polynomials or of polynomials. So this is irreducible. So that means this is the factorization of this element of zx which I have established, and I am saying this is unique, right? So if you will be thinking that there will exist another possible factorization, something like linear into cubic, uh, and those linear and cubic are going to be irreducible, so that means that is wrong, that is incorrect. If you are able to find it, find the factorization into irreducible of quadratic into quadratic, so that means if any other factorization exists, so that is only going to be quadratic into quadratic. In fact, there will be no other polynomial. The other polynomials are just going to be the associates of this one. So zx is also a UFD. So we have actually a very well sorted proof of zx is a unique factorization domain. I've just skipped that proof. It was very lengthy. It was in the previous chapter actually where we studied polynomial rings. So we skipped from there, but we need to remember this result and use this, that zx is a unique factorization domain. Right. So the next result which we have, the next theorem which we have is, now see that we'll start connecting the things. From integral domain, we formulated one kind of domain, call it PID. From integral domain only, we formulated another kind of domain, which is UFT. So now we want to see, is there any connection between PID and UFT? So this theorem tells you that every principal ideal domain is a unique factorization domain. So it's easy to remember. PID implies UFT. So if you have any principal ideal domain, it has to be unique factorization domain according to this theorem. So here also I'm going to skip the proof of it. Okay, we can read the proof from the book itself, but actually this requires a certain other concepts from module theory and something like that. So I'm skipping it right now. Let's not go into the proof. What is more important is the result and its utilization. So every principal ideal domain is a unique factorization domain. So that is why I listed down the examples of PID. So Z is a PID and Z is also a UFD. Every field, Q, R, these are all PIDs and therefore these are all UFDs. So every field is a principal ideal domain and every field is a unique factorization domain. Fx, where F is a field. This is definitely going to be a UFD, right? So this is the result. PID implies UFD. So now, is the converse true? No. That means there exists unique factorization domain which is not principal ideal domain. So that means if you want to draw the inclusion diagram of it, so this PID is actually contained in UFT. So every PID is a UFT, but there are UFDs here, there are elements lying here, unique factorization domain, which are not PID. So what is the example for that? The example which we just considered, ZX, which I just shown you, that ZX is going to be a unique factorization domain. We can have any polynomials and write its factorization, and that factorization is going to be unique in irreducible. So it's UFT. But ZX is not a PID, right? So ZX is a UFD, but ZX is not a PID. So for that, I can give you an example that why ZX is not a PID. So what should I do to prove that ZX is not a PID? PID means every ideal should be out of the form principal ideal. So that means there exist ideals in ZX which are not principal ideal types. So to prove this part that this ZX is not a principal ideal domain, let's consider some ideal. So I'm going to consider the ideal which is generated by 2 and x. It's going to be similar to the proof which we did in the beginning, the very first theorem. So I'm going to generate an ideal with 2 elements, so say 2 and x, because 2 also belongs to zx and x also belongs to zx. Now I will show that this ideal is not generated by any single element of the zx, right? For some hx belongs to zx. This is what I want to show. So on the contrary, we will suppose it is true. On the contrary, suppose this is being generated by some single polynomial hx, it implies 2 is going to be hx into gx and x is also going to be some multiple of hx, because that is what the meaning of this is, right? So 2 is hx into gx implies what? That hx is a constant polynomial. Obviously, you cannot create a constant polynomial by multiplying two non-constant polynomials. So gx is also a constant polynomial, only then you can generate two, but particularly I just need the information about hx. So hx is going to be a constant polynomial, right? So now 2 is going to be say, so hx is constant polynomial, that means whatever value of x I put in h, it is going to be same. So if I say give you hx is c, so h of 1 is also c, h of 2 is also c, because that's what the meaning of the constant function is. Whatever x you substitute, it is going to be same. So 2 is going to be same as h1 into g1. I just put x is equal to 1. Now, what are the possibilities of h1? Remember, you are in z, your underlying ring is integers, right? So what can be the possibilities of h1? How you can generate the integer 2? By multiplying other two integers. What is the prime factorization of 2? Yes, how you can generate 2? 2 into 1, 1 into 2. Minus 2 into minus 1, minus 1 into minus 2. If you just consider all of them different, according to me, they are all same, because just now I gave you the definition of UFD, because it is now Z. Z is definitely a unique factorization to me. So whatever it is, so this H1 is going to be either 2 or 1 or minus 2 or minus 1. Or the other number is going to be G1. So this H1 is going to be plus minus 1 or plus minus 2, right? Is this fine?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. So now H1 cannot be equal to plus minus 1, because otherwise what is going to happen if H1 is same as plus minus 1, then 1, because the ideal is being generated by H polynomial. The ideal is being generated by hx. So if the ideal is generated by a polynomial which is a constant polynomial, and that polynomial is the unit element, 1 is the unit element, then in that case our 2x is going to be the complete zx, right? Because if the h polynomial turns out to be unit, so the ideal generated by unit element is going to be the complete ring itself. So that is obviously the contradiction. So therefore h1 is plus minus 2. So if this you substitute here, h1 is plus minus 2 means hx is plus minus 2, because h is constant, whatever x is. So this will give you x is plus minus 2 times f of x. So now how it is possible? Again, x is plus minus 2 times f of x. So is that possible for some polynomial fx belongs to zx? I can write x is 2 times x by 2. Then it will make sense, right? 2 into x by 2, or minus 2 into x by minus 2. Then I can create x. But this by 2 by minus 2, this is not allowed because I am in integers. So this also is a contradiction, or you can say this is also not possible. So that means whatever possibilities we had for h1 plus minus 1 or plus minus 2, they are leading us to contradiction. Therefore our supposition is wrong. This is not a PID. This ZX is not a principal ideal domain. So we started with a very simple example of the ideal generated from two elements that is not being generated by a single element. So you can have plenty of more examples you can create on the similar lines and show. So this is the example we have for a UFD which is not a PID. Right. So please ask if you have any doubts. Is that fine? ZX is not a PID, but it is a UFD. Right. So next time we'll come with more examples of this PID UFD and more definitions of the third kind of domain. We are left with one more kind of domain, which is Euclidean domain. So we'll take up that in the next lecture. That's all for today. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.